Welcome to No Room for Phonies,
Episode 113.
another books worth reading, Permission to Feel, The Power of Emotional Intelligence to Achieve Well-Being and Success.
By Mark Brackett.
So the 5 skills that are covered, that are outlined in the book, are to recognize your own emotions and those of others, but not just in things we think, feel, and say, but in facial expressions and body language and vocal tones and other kinds of non-verbal signals.
Very interesting in this time of screens and...
Yes, he talks
Zoom
about that
calls.
in the book, actually.
Okay.
And the second one is to understand those feelings and determine their source, what experiences actually cause them, and then see how they've influenced our behaviors.
The third skill is to label emotions with a nuanced vocabulary. So have more words than just
Sad, happy,
angry, bored.
frustrated. And the next one is to express our feelings in accordance with cultural norms and social contexts in a way that tries to inform and invites empathy from the listener.
So you mean like yelling at people
Yeah, that's what I mean.
or yelling in the microphone?
That's it. Yelling in the microphone. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, and the fifth skill is to regulate emotions rather than let them regulate us by finding practical strategies for dealing with what we feel and what others feel.
Yeah. So our emotional state, and if you don't know this, then you're not listening to your body or watching yourself when you're when you're feeling emotionally upset. Our emotional state determines where we direct our attention, what we remember, and what we learn. So if we're in the grip of a strong emotion, such as anger or sadness, but also elation and joy, we perceive the world differently, and the choices we make at that moment are influenced for better or for worse.
Just like when people say you wear rose-colored sunglasses. Wait, is that the expression?
Rose-colored glasses.
Rose-colored glasses. When things are really great, you do remember things differently, and you kind of block out some of the other stuff that's going around, just as well as.
And the thing is, like, sometimes when you think back at your childhood, right? If you feel like you had a happy childhood, you probably don't remember a lot of the bad things that happened. But if you feel like you had a stressful or unhappy childhood, then you might remember.
You might not remember much of the good times.
Like if you're angry at your parents, like it just influences what we remember.
A lot.
So what we feel and how we interpret other people's feelings sends signals to approach or avoid, to affiliate with someone or distance ourselves, or to reward and or punish. So our feelings have a really big impact on how we live our lives.
And relationships.
Yes.
And positive and negative emotions can cause different physiological reactions within our bodies and brains. And those feelings, emotions, release powerful chemicals that in turn affect our physical and mental well-being.
So in order to achieve big goals, get good grades, and thrive in our collaborations at work, we have to use our emotions as if they are tools. And that's a lot of what he talks about. So the next part of it is where he talks about this emotional skills being acquired, and he has this way.
He has an acronym.
Yeah.
Or a mnemonic device.
And so he uses it to amplify our skills and help us get through challenges. And his acronym is RULER.
RULER. Each letter stands for something.
So recognize the R is recognize the occurrence of an emotion by noticing a change in your thoughts or your energy or your body.
So that feeling of hot ears or the redness in your neck or the butterflies in your tummy.
And then the U is understanding, knowing the causes of emotions and see how they influence our thoughts and decisions, helping us make better predictions about our own and other people's behaviors.
And then the L is for labeling, and that's making connections between an emotional experience and the precise terms to describe it in order to increase your self-awareness and to communicate effectively, and to also reduce a lot of misunderstandings in social situations.
So then there's the expressing, knowing how and when to display your emotions and being able to feel and modify your behavior.
And the last R stands for regulating, which is monitoring, tempering, and modifying your emotional reactions in helpful ways, and learning to accept and deal with inconvenient emotions.
So, and employing skills to manage your emotions and help others manage theirs. So then he kind of goes into each chapter like a bit more detail about each of the four, or the one, two,
five.
Sorry, I was
skills.
trying to think of how you spelled ruler. So there's the recognizing emotion, which is recognizing emotion in yourself and others with accuracy, and it's the first step. So that's where the mood meter is introduced. It's a chart in the back of the book and allows you to develop more language for moods than just happy, sad, anger, fear, surprise, disgust.
And I will put a link to this poster because he has a version online. So in the show notes of the blog and in the description of the YouTube video, you'll find the link.
The challenge is the nonverbal cues. One person will see anger, another person might see fear. And, he talks about how often we misread people. And then he does quite a lot in all the sections about culture and personality influence how we express emotion, gender and race and other biases also influence how we express and recognize an emotion in ourselves and others.
So you have to kind of think as fine-tuned for culture as family culture. Because, in some families, anger is expressed a certain way. In other families, it's sullen, quiet.
Right. And you deal with this at work.
And then between
different
country cultures.
Yes.
But even within Canada, I would say there's urban culture versus small town. There's East Coast versus West Coast. So all those kinds of differences.
And screens and Botox and all these kinds of modern things make it more difficult for us to recognize emotion.
I'm sorry.
No, he talks about Botox.
So the lips and eyebrows can't move.
Yeah.
So the faces are stiff.
Yeah. So we improve recognition when we practice, and we start by identifying the major quadrant where it exists. And you can always get it wrong, but you have to try. So the quadrants are like high energy, low pleasantness. So those are like enraged, uneasy, shocked, etc.
And he colors that red.
Yeah. And then the low energy or low pleasantness are like disgusted, glum, drained, despairing, etc.
And in the chart, those are blue.
And then high energy, high pleasantness is pleased, cheerful, excited, inspired, thrilled.
And that's the yellow quadrant on the poster.
And then low energy, high pleasantness are relaxed, secure, peaceful, fulfilled, etc. So
that's the green one.
So that's where you first start to try to understand or to try to recognize by using the quadrants. And then you move into understanding, which begins when we start to explore the question, why? Why this feeling? Why now? What's the underlying cause or theme that fuels the emotion? And then you do the understanding part just by asking questions of yourself, or, I remember doing this with kids. Like, you're so angry. What just happened? What were you doing before you got angry?
Yeah.
What might have caused the feelings or the reactions?
And then sometimes it's like, what memories do I have about the situation or place? Because just thinking about something in the past can bring those emotions to the forefront.
And is there a pattern? Like, is there something that usually makes you feel that way? So we can better understand emotions and their linked causes and ramifications by considering them in pairs and groupings. So he talks a bit about that. We can develop pattern recognition to help us know what questions to ask and how to search for the truth. And he goes into like major detail, but some suggested pairs that he says are common are shame, guilt, jealousy and envy, joy and contentment, stress and pressure, entitlement and disrespect. So when I see someone, who is entitled, entitlement and disrespect could really be a trigger for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So that you can understand or be curious
why somebody is upset when they see somebody, entitled, because it triggers an emotion,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, stress is a response to many demands and not enough resources. And understanding is in some ways the most challenging skill to acquire because it takes real bravery to follow the investigation to the end.
I like how he says we need to be scientists and be motivated and remember that the skill of understanding empowers us to be better friends, better family members, better students, colleagues, and partners.
And he kind of talks about the fact that, you know, in a family, if you really inquire why somebody's upset, they might be upset because of something you've done. So you have to, that's where the kind of the bravery comes in. So the labeling is, he starts by asking the question, do we label our emotions as well as we label the flavor of our foods, the clothes we wear, etc.? Like we spend, he started by talking about being with a bunch of people that were asked to express what the flavors of a certain kind of wine were, and they were giving all these different flavors of the wine and everything, and he's like, so how do you feel? And they said happy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
they couldn't come up with more nuance.
No, but we have all these words for food and, you know, other things.
We have all the words for the emotions.
We do. We just don't.
I think the chart has 64
different. And if we can label properly, it actually legitimizes and organizes our experiences. When we attach a word to a feeling, it gives emotion substance and kind of creates this mental model of the word, which means it can be compared with other feelings we have and also other people's feelings.
Yeah. He started this, or I don't know. He uses this to teach children in school in school systems in the States. They've done a lot of research, and to make it work, they had to have buy-in from the principal.
Yeah,
sorry, am I jumping ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. What emotion are you feeling? Because I'm.
Well, no, I don't care, but we just have to remember we talked about it. Yeah.
I'm just teasing.
Okay, you went too far up. Sorry. It helps others to meet our needs once we are able to communicate with specificity what we're feeling. The people in our lives can look beyond our behaviors to understand their causes. So empathy is more available to us. And then similarly, it helps us meet the needs of others. Once we know how someone is feeling, it's easier to support them. Mm-hmm. And not just like, oh, I'm happy. No. Like, I'm thrilled with this. I can't believe this. And then,
right. So it connects us to the rest of the world in a much better way because our emotions become a form of communication and a way to share the experience of being alive. And there's a body of research showing the health benefits of social connectivity. And this is where it begins, by being able to identify with one another. And the terminology of emotion allows us to read one another's lives, almost as if we would read a novel. The words give us each a story to tell.
And that is the power of labeling. There are more words for negative emotions. We usually experience because we usually experience them more deeply. And there's a connection between the size of our emotional vocabulary and the importance of emotion in our lives.
So he's saying there's a direct correlation. If you don't have a big vocabulary for your emotions, you're not really truly working through your emotions.
No. And we overuse and misuse the label stress. So often we misuse it. We call it like anxiety, fear, pressure. All are interconnected, but they're distinctly different. So ask yourself, how are you feeling? Do it before it becomes daunting. Like when you first start feeling emotional, and then come up with as many ways as you can, like more thoughtful and precise than what you normally do.
Yeah.
So it's another thing that just takes practice, right? And then the E in the ruler is expressing, which is revealing yourself and deciding if you can share this. The scariest of all, are you brave enough to say, here's how I feel and why, here's what I want to happen next, here's what I need from you right now, and it's probably as intimate as you're really ever going to be with someone.
Yeah. And emotional suppression is a major force in society. It is scary to hear people express their emotions. So as a society, we tend to bury that. And sometimes we have to hear some hard truths about ourselves.
So that's why, people are reluctant to express and people are reluctant to listen. So we need to express our emotions in healthy ways, not screaming or whining or being aggressive, The term emotional labor, I love, refers to managing the way we express our feelings.
Yeah. 'Cause
And I thought that
it
he
is a work.
and I mean the each of these is like a whole chapter with stories and examples and all
Mhm.
kinds of things like to go with it. And then regulating is the process by which individuals influence which emotions they have, when they have them, and how they experience and express the emotions.
And he challenges us how, like, this question: how do people develop constructive strategies that promote personal growth, foster and maintain positive relationships, and lead to both greater well-being and goal attachment? So then, of course, he answers.
Yeah, and he says emotional regulation starts with giving ourselves permission to own our own feelings, all of them. You can say no, you can feel tired and splash water in your face. You can avoid showing something to someone if you feel they're going to be critical of it. Like, and then he gives strategies for emotional regulation, like mindful breathing, forward-looking strategies, attention shifting strategies, cognitive reframing strategies, where you say, I'm so upset right now, I'm so upset right now. What is actually true about
Mhm.
what I'm thinking about or feeling? And then he talks about the meta moment where you like literally just stop and get yourself under control. And I was comparing it a little bit to the vagus nerve, what they call bullet breathing, where you slow down your breathing, you slow down your walk, like your movements, everything, and like just breathe and get yourself back kind of into a zone where you're in control.
Interesting.
And
I
yeah,
didn't know that was called bullet
yeah.
breathing.
Anyway, and then this meta moment is very similar, and
Mhm.
he talks about that a lot when it comes to kids.
Yeah.
Like when you're a parent, just stepping back and taking that meta moment so you don't let your emotions kind of take control. And it's like when you say to a kid who's like, because you do try to teach self-regulation in school, right?
We hope
So, when you say to a kid, okay, take a breath, like just relax, like take a big belly breath, a diaphragmatic breath. Not that you would say that to a kid, you say the belly breath. And that's kind of what they're referring to. So all these strategies for self-regulation. And
so that was the ruler acronym.
yeah, and he does a chapter on each one and
then
explains
he moves
it thoroughly.
into emotions in different situations.
And he just says, so emotions at home is the one chapter. And his statement is that parents who value emotions tend to be aware of their children's emotions and act like coaches. So strong feelings are a healthy part of normal development. Be careful, and this is what he says. This is the research. Mothers speak more to their daughters about feelings and display a wider range of feelings to daughters than to sons.
And
Fathers, yes.
discourage boys from expressing emotional vulnerability and use tougher language with sons than they do with daughters.
And when parents tell stories to their preschool children, they use more emotion words with daughters than with sons.
And mothers smile more and are more expressive to infant and toddler girls than boys, and talk more about sadness with daughters and more about anger with sons.
So those are just cautionary tales.
And this is
from research.
This is not just North America. This is across the globe.
Yes, like there's a lot. He actually has a lot of research. Your children will inherit the emotional vocabulary that you provide. In parent-child co-regulation, the child is an active participant in his or her regulation, but the parent provides the strategies, just like a teacher at the school.
The other thing that, I don't know if he gets into it, about being cautious as a parent of providing the emotion for the child that might not actually fit, like it might be a negative one.
Right.
Like, you're shy, or
Yes.
you're afraid.
No,
and then the child takes that word on and labels everything that way.
Yeah, no, it's very much listening to the child and helping them like maybe more deeply label the emotion that they are actually expressing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we want to feel as a family is the big question, and what can we do to experience these feelings as much as possible? So bringing emotional intelligence to your family means that, like, step one, you actually set yourself up for success by answering those 2 questions and keeping them kind of at the top of your mind daily.
And the second step is to explore. So you listen to your children and to each other to understand. And remember that behavior is a symptom of an emotion. So you validate and you show unconditional love and support and help to deactivate when necessary. Don't put words in your child's mouth and avoid words like nervous and anxious. Allow them to express their feelings and listen for themes and help them to label.
And then number 3 is step 3 is to strategize, build the strategy muscle, like self-talk and reprisal, a hug, or just being present. Like build strategies into your daily life as a family. And then step 4 is just to follow up and do regular check-ins and have compassion for yourself and your child. You're always going to make mistakes. You might fly off the handle. It's okay.
Well,
it is
I
just
remember,
the way it is.
I mean, we hadn't read this book when we had young kids, but well, first of all, I made a deliberate decision not to be that father that doesn't talk about emotions.
Right.
I worked a lot on helping the kids like say what they were feeling and not swallow it and ramp it down. And the other thing, we had family meetings often.
Yes, we talked it out. And even if somebody was clamming up, we kind of just waited them out.
Yep.
So
And
they had to
then
share.
We also took timeouts ourselves and
Yeah.
said, I'm going for a timeout.
Yeah. No.
And just gave the example that we needed to kind of decompress on our own.
Right. So the next chapter he talks about is emotions at school. And I did this short because he basically, like you had said before, they have this whole program that they implement in schools, this ruler where they use it. But so this is how he says you have to do it, is it has to be systematic and not piecemeal. So it has to come from the top. It has to be a part of what the school has chosen to do. It can't just be, one classroom teacher deciding they're going to do it, but nobody else. So,
I mean, that would help a little bit, but it's not a long-term effectiveness.
No, he said, if you really want to do this, and then it has to be proactive and not reactive. And then you have to integrate it into the curriculum. Go back down, dear. Sorry. You have to integrate it into the curriculum and provide skill building across all the grade levels to reach all the children. And you have to pay attention to the outcomes. So it's really an active research-based kind of a program where you put it in place in a proactive manner. You integrate it into all different classrooms and not even just like classrooms. It happens on the playground. It happens in your staff meetings. It happens like everywhere. And then you have to keep track of outcomes. So,
and, I mean, he has a lot of research on how this reduces bullying in school and other things.
And you can read all about it. It's very interesting.
If I were a parent now and had read this when our kids were little, I'd be going to parent council and spreading the word around.
Because it's pretty simple.
And then holding the principal and teachers accountable for it to be implemented.
And I mean, we have programs, and we had, I don't know if they still exist, like Roots of Empathy and kinds of things, but they were definitely piecemeal. It was not systematic. And he's saying that's the only way. So then the last not the last chapter, but near the last
the next context.
Yes, is the workplace. The workplace is a challenging environment, and I love the way he says this. We spend half our waking hours there, surrounded by people we didn't choose to hang around with, and we don't necessarily share our habits, our values, or our tastes. So we need to find a way to make it work, to cooperate and collaborate, or risk being unsuccessful or unhappy. The emotional stakes are high, and emotions are the most powerful force inside the workplace. Emotional contagion is a powerful force at work. And we know this because one person gets all pissed off about something and it just goes, it spins around.
They can't see your hand cycling.
So, well, my hand was cycling and it just spins around.
Yeah, and builds like a tornado. So
he talks about building emotional intelligence in the workplace as a set of skills. It correlates with a wide range of workplace outcomes: creativity, innovation, organizational commitment, job satisfaction,
customer service ratings, managerial performance, social support from team members, the emergence of new leaders,
like the extent to which someone not in a official leadership position exerts influence over the colleague.
right.
And then there's transformational leadership, including greater motivation and inspiration. Job performance, particularly in jobs requiring more emotional labor and even merit pay. And he talks about the fact that having an emotional, intelligent leader doesn't mean that they're nice. It means that they're honest and able to deliver difficult feedback that improves performance and the ability to increase productivity. It isn't all about comfort and sympathy. It's about challenging conversations and righting situations when they go awry. And it's so interesting because I was with a group of friends today, and one of the women who was like actually a trailblazer in women's leadership talked about how she did that. And she's a very emotionally intelligent person, but she never backed down from anything. And she said one of the hardest parts of being like moving from being a teacher, whatever, to an
Administrator.
to a superintendent,
Well,
she
for
ended
her,
up
yeah.
being, and all the, the roles as a teacher. She was loved by the parents. She was loved by the kids. Most of the other staff members liked her. All of a sudden, she became a superintendent, and people did not like her. And part of it was because she was a woman.
Yep.
Straight up. She was the first woman ever in our school board to become a superintendent. So she fought a lot of battles for the rest of us. But her stories today about how she would just say, like, sit down and say to a teacher, well, you're nice to the kids, but you're not teaching them anything. I didn't hire you to be nice. I hired you to teach. So, like, she never backed down from anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even in situations that she helped me with, she never backed down from parents, nothing. She knew what was right, and she just did it with emotional intelligence. And so getting a handle on our emotions and how we feel, we relate to others, reduces stress and burnout at work. But I mean, I think she always struggled with that because it's hard, as I've said to you, when you become the leader, the only way, if you want to have a job,
lonely at the top.
if you want to have a job where everyone likes you, you either sell or give away ice cream. Like that's all that's all there is to it. So, and then at the very end of it, he talks about creating an emotional revolution. I just want to, just before I say that, I do want to give a shout out to this person. Her name was Marion Woodcock, who was a trailblazer for women in our school board. Like, she was the first, and she did it like extremely well. So, and was extremely emotionally intelligent way before her time. And, and mentored other women and, did all kinds of things that were risky for the sake of women. And here we are, we talked about that actually today, still in 2024, and we're still fighting those battles, which is kind of discouraging. But anyway, that's a whole other aside. Maybe I'll do some kind of book on women in leadership again. So he talks about creating an emotional revolution where everyone would listen more and judge less. Fewer kids would live in poverty. There would be less stigma and racism.
Emotional intelligence would be as important to education as math, literacy, and science.
All emotions would be appreciated, especially the negative ones.
There would be less self-deception.
And feelings would be seen as strengths, not weaknesses.
Men need to learn that.
Yeah.
More people would be their authentic and best selves.
Schools would be places where students spend time reflecting on their purpose and passion and developing the skills they need to make their dreams come true.
And people would leave their workplace thinking, I can't wait to return to work tomorrow.
And we'd see less self-destructive and greater self-compassion.
There would be less bullying, a greater sense of belonging, and more harmonious relationships.
And depression and anxiety rates would be dramatically reduced. And families and schools would work together to support kids' healthy development. Emotion skills are the key to unlocking the potential inside each one of us. And in the process of developing these skills, we each, heart by heart, mind by mind, create a culture and society unlike anything we've experienced thus far, and very much like the one we might dare to imagine. Our future and our children's future depends on it. And I would say in these times of
strife and division,
political, craziness
and
everywhere,
cultural divide,
I hope that you pick up this book and see where it takes you. This is a very, very brief overview of what Permission to Feel talks about. There's tons of examples. There's way more detail. So I would encourage you, if it, kind of strikes you as something you want to explore, to pick it up and go for it.
Yeah. Like we're talking about it to you, the podcast audience, and our circle of closest friends and acquaintances. And if more and more people would take on his challenge to have an emotional revolution, I think in small steps it would be.
Yeah, well, it's just kind of like when you see the one person up on the stage dancing and everybody's ignoring it, but then somebody joins them, and then all of a sudden the next person joins and the next person joins, and you've started a dance revolution, right? So that's the same thing as for this. So I kind of forgot what we're doing for June 15th, and I kind of want to do the book that I just finished reading called Not Nice.
Okay.
Because it's a really
for me.
It's a really, really interesting book about not being nice. And that's all I'm going to say about that for now. So Thank you for joining us
for episode 113.
Permission to Feel.
Good night.